Welcome to our fourth episode of creating an archaeology game using arcade.makecode.com. Where we left off last time, we basically had a game that was pretty well working. So we had our little archaeologist who could move across the screen. He could dig through some blocks and he could find some of the bones, the fossils that were buried inside of the ground here. So the goal was that he had to find all of these fossils during the period of time that we've allocated. In this case it was 30 seconds. So he's going around trying to find them, and if he doesn't find them then he loses. If he does find them then he ends up winning the game. So we're going to continue on with that today. The first thing we're going to do is think about our gameplay and what we're trying to achieve here. So at the moment we have an archaeologist that digs through the dirt and he finds fossils. And with those fossils, we've got to collect a certain number of them in a certain amount of time. But what we want to do is add a little bit more of a challenge to our gameplay. We want our archaeologist to be, having a bit of a sense of danger here. So we want him to be digging through the dirt, and we want to have the potential that he might stumble across a gas, maybe a pipeline that can release some gas. And if he does that, he might lose a life. So we might allocate maybe 3 lives or something like that, and we'll add a few potentially dangerous gas pipes that he has to try and avoid. So to do that, what we're going to do is basically take a look at the code that we already wrote last time. So if you recall, we had this variable which is set to items to collect, which was a random number. So then we use that random number to use a loop to set a whole bunch of bones all over the scene wherever there was a blank tile. So let's use that same approach again. This time we're only going to set a small number of gas pipes. So if I go to loops, I'm going to grab my repeat block and I'm going to drop it between the 2 existing repeat blocks. And the reason why I have done that is I want to make sure that my gas pipes get added to the screen before my dirt particles do, because my dirt particles are going to cover those gas pipes up. So in this case I'm going to add 3 gas pipes to my scene, so I'm going to repeat 3 times. I'm going to come up to sprites and I'm going to grab my create sprite block and put it inside the loop. I'm going to change the variable so that it's something a little bit more meaningful, so a gas pipe. And I don't want it to be a kind of player, because when we come to check for our overlaps later on, I want to be able to check to see that my player has collided with something else. I'm going to call this an artifact. So if you don't have this category, all I had to do is hit add new kind and I can type my category in. Okay, now let's see if I can draw a nice pipe. Go with orange. And I might draw an orange pipe like this, and let's make it, I'll fill it using the fill tool, and I'm going to try and draw some green toxic gas coming out of it. Okay. All right. So I've got a gas pipe sprite. I want to do the same thing that I did last time, and I want to place that in a random location in my scene. So I'm going to come back to my scene, I'm going to scroll all the way down, and I'm looking for this block that says place my sprite on top of a random transparent block. I'm going to drop that in. I'm going to change it from my sprite to gas pipe. And I'm going to test that out and see what happens. So hopefully when I play my game I can come across a few gas pipes. There's one, looking good. Okay, and there should only be 3 of them. Good, looking good. And somewhere along there should be another gas pipe. Oop, I won. I clicked all the bones. Excellent. All right, so that hasn't affected our gameplay just yet because we haven't got any code in here that's going to handle the overlapping situation. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to handle for the case that our player has overlapped with our gas pipe artifact. So I'm going to come up to sprites, and I'm going to scroll down, and I'm going to look for my overlapping block again, just like I did last time. I'm just going to drag it down the bottom here so we can see it. Now it says on sprite of kind player overlaps with another sprite of kind player. Well, we know that our other type here is going to be our artifacts. So our archaeologist has hit our artifact, and there we go. So now we've got the situation where when our archaeologist hits our artifact, we want to be able to do something. I'm going to come back into info here, and I want to be able to change my lives. So if I drag this block over, it's going to say change life by 1. Okay. Now, to be able to change a life by 1, I need to have set my player up to have a certain number of lives first. So I've got, under info, I've got set my lives to 3. So that should be one of the first instructions that we do. So I'm going to drag that up, and I'm going to change it so that it goes just underneath our score and our countdown just there. So when we first start, we've got 3 lives. If we overlap with an artifact, which is going to be one of our gas pipelines, we're going to lose or change that life by 1. Let's test that out and see what happens. So I can see at the top now I've got 3 little hearts which indicate my lives, and I'm looking for a gas pipe. Now you notice straight away the game was over, because what's happened is I've hit that gas pipeline. That gas pipeline hasn't been destroyed, so it's changed my life by 1. It's detected an overlap again, and it's taken my second life. It's detected an overlap, and then it's taken my third life. So we need to make sure that we destroy that gas pipeline when we have the overlap. We do the same thing up here when we find our fossils. So let's add a destroy block. So under sprites, and just under here with effects, destroy, and destroy my sprite. We don't want to destroy my sprite, we want to destroy our other sprite, which in this case is our artifact or our gas pipeline. So I'm going to drag that in and get rid of the little block that goes over there. Now let's test again. So we're looking for a gas pipeline. Oh, I must have found one because my life went away. So that tells us that when we do find these things, we've got to be able to do something that, there we go, that tells us, so if I hit that, my lives are over. So what's happening is when we hit that gas pipeline, it disappears straight away. And as a player, we don't really get a chance to see what happens here. So what we want to have happen is when we hit that, we want to pause just for a second so that the player can really feel that jolt of, oh my gosh, I've just hit a gas pipeline. That's bad. So let's see what we can do here. The first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to give the gas pipeline sprite an effect so that when we destroy it, we'll see it sort of turn to ashes. We'll make that last for about a second. The next thing we want to do, we want to really let the player know that we've hit that gas pipeline. So we want the whole game to kind of, or the player to kind of come to a bit of a halt. So to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to change the controller settings so that the buttons don't move, they don't respond to any input. So I've gone up to controller and I've grabbed move my sprite with buttons, and I'm going to expand it out. And now this gives us the X and the Y speeds. So if I click 0 and 0, what I'm saying now is the controller buttons aren't going to move the player at all at this point. Now we only want that to happen just for a second. So I'm going to come into loops and I'm going to find the pause block. And I'm going to put that in. I'm going to change it to be 1 second. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to reset the controllers back to being their normal speeds again. So let's test that out and see if it works as I think it should. So I'm looking for the point where I hit a gas pipeline, and still looking. There we go. Now I was trying my best to try and move around, but I couldn't move for a second. So it really indicated to me that I was hitting a gas pipeline. So that the whole game kind of froze up on me. And yeah, that's exactly what I wanted. That's really good. So I think that's a good place to leave this episode off. So basically what we've done is we've come along and we've made it a little bit more difficult for our archaeologist to just plough through the dirt. So he's still looking for his fossils. This time we've added some artifacts that he might stumble across. So as he's digging, he might hit a pipe that's going to release some gas, and it's going to take a life off him. So our game now has 3 lives, and we also placed 3 gas pipelines down. So it's a little bit more challenging on that aspect. And we've added a little bit so that when he does touch those gas pipelines, we kind of pause the game, the controller movement, just for a second or so. So it also acts like a little bit of a penalty for finding that gas pipeline. So in the next episode, we'll finish this off with adding a few extra sound effects and a few other little things. So again, keep coding, and we'll talk next time.